What was the bet, Dad?
I don't know.
I think they could do 3 or 4 tonight.
You don't remember that?
No, I don't know.
Or you don't want to talk about it?
That's none of your
That was
business.
before. That was before he met. That was before he met me.
So how old were you two when you met?
Probably 19. You went.
Yeah, we were both out of school.
Yeah.
So did Blooming Prairie ever play Owatonna in sports
No.
or anything? Or you two
No,
different
we,
size schools?
We had their coach over Fulton. Was he the football coach?
Yeah.
And he, in the summertime when Owatonna had a baseball team, he was the catcher for our team for a number of years.
So
But no,
how many people did you graduate with, Mom, when you graduated from
I
Owatonna
think it
High
was
School?
about 125.
Now, how many people did you graduate
I
with,
think
Dad?
it was 64.
Okay. So you meet when you're 19, you go roller skating together. How long did you date before you got engaged?
He went into the service in February of '52.
So he was 20.
And then he spent time in California, and then he went to Alaska.
Yeah.
It wasn't until he got back from Alaska. No, it wasn't either. It was before he went to Alaska.
Well,
And
were
then
you,
when he came back from Alaska, then he went to Georgia. He came back in May and went to Georgia, and then we got married that December, '54.
so you were still dating him while he was in the service?
I wasn't dating anybody because he was in the service.
I know, but were you seeing other people while he was in the service
No.
away, or he was your boyfriend?
We were engaged before he went to Alaska.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. Okay.
And then he was in till we were married in December '54, so we spent '55 in Atlanta or in Georgia. And he wasn't supposed to get out till February of '56, but he got, since the semester started in January, he could get out like 30 days before the semester started. He was enrolled at the University of Minnesota. And so we were able to get home in time. Darlene and Bob got married 2 days after Christmas, and so we were home in time for that wedding. He was in the wedding.
Now, so when
When
you
Alan was born, I had 17 days to my credit when he was born.
so 9 months, 17
17
days.
days, yes.
Okay. So when you started college, was Alan was already here?
Alan
Yeah,
was born
Alan-
in Atlanta,
Okay, Alan was born in
at the
Atlanta.
3rd Army Hospital
Okay.
in Atlanta.
Now, did you work while you were going to college?
Yes, indeed. In fact, I got that lot next to her dad, and I built a house to sell. I built some other buildings at the farm. I also worked at the canning company.
So were you commuting up to the city, or where did you live?
In the summer, this was
Oh,
in the summer that he would
okay.
do that. But when he was building the house, when he got it up, well, he worked mostly over the summer, but we'd come down on weekends and he'd do work, and then Grandma would give us sometimes milk and butter and meat. But he built a corn crib for your dad and a couple other things.
So you got a 2-year degree in what?
Well, it was
Just
general.
associate arts, general. And then he went into engineering.
For 2 years.
So
And
how
then-
long were you in college? For 2 years?
Well,
or
almost 4 years, but not quite.
4? Okay.
But then I got a job as a carpenter.
You know, almost immediately as a construction superintendent.
But, and at that time, that paid better than a starting engineer by quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I stuck with that for 7 years.
And who'd you work for?
Joe Peterson, he hardly ever talked, but he was a neat old guy.
Thought the world of the men that worked for him.
He'd been in the business for about 40 years. So he was a neat old guy. I really got along good with him.
Now, was that before unions existed?
Before what?
Before unions existed? So you only got paid if you worked?
No, I got it as soon as I went to work for him. I was over 21, so I couldn't take an apprenticeship, but I could take a written and an oral test at the union. So I took the written and oral test and I got a journeyman card. So I was started out right away as at union wage.
Okay. And did you get paid if you didn't work because it was raining out or you got hurt? Did you didn't get
you
paid?
got paid for the hours you worked.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I only had one rain out in the 7 years I worked for him. I only missed one day in the 7 years I worked for him.
And then there was also the freeze out. They were working on a house, working outside, and it was so cold. And Joe said, if it doesn't get above 0 next week, he was going to put him on a different job. So it got above 0. But he was working in 30 below 0 temperatures outside.
Now, didn't you build something at the Minnesota Botanical Gardens?
Yeah, at the
Arboretum.
University of Minnesota Arboretum, I built the first pavilion. And that's funny because a few years ago we went to the orchid show there, and I think it was $7 a piece to get in, and he says, "Do you know your way around here?" And I handed him a 20, and I said, "Yeah, I built the first pavilion here." He handed me back 20, and he said, "Be our guest."
Yeah. And didn't you get hurt building that pavilion?
No,
You could have.
I fell, but I didn't get hurt.
Okay. You fell what, off the roof or?
No, we just had the rafters up, and it started to rain, so we threw a canvas over it, and we had planks up there for scaffolding. One of the guy who were working down below, he took the braces out from under the planks. So I got up to take down when it quit raining, I got up to take down the plastic, and I stepped on the plank, and it just went straight down, and I landed on a timber about 6 feet below standing up. Otherwise, I'd have went all the way to the floor.
Which was concrete.
You know.
Yeah. So you never got hurt working construction?
Yeah, I fell off a wall once and broke a hand.
When you first started, it was at the beginning.
No, we were living in
St. Louis
Yeah.
Park.
St. Louis Park.
Yeah.
at the time.
But he didn't work too long, and he came home, and he had the cast on his arm. He got back to work after he put the cast on, and it was cold, and that was wet, and it got so cold that he couldn't stand it, so he came home. But he still went back to work, hammering with a broken arm, or broken wrist,
Broken
it wasn't.
hand, that was the hand.
Yeah.
Now,
But that's the only time I got hurt.
Well, you broke some ribs when you were helping.
Oh,
Over at Marlis's.
That wasn't,
It wasn't work, but
no.
he fell there.
so when did you, or how'd you decide to when did you start making your inventions?
Well, we were building this huge house for Gregory, and they had a bank of doors that showed from the entrance to the house, and they didn't want anything. They wanted it to look like a blank wall, or a paneled wall, but there wasn't anything that would do that. So, because you had to round the corners, if you put pivot hinges in, you had to round the corners in the doors. So I decided I could make a hinge that would move out as you opened the door. It was rack and pinion set up. So I made some for that.
Called the rolling pivot hinge. Their house, you came in, there was this entrance and these sweeping stairways up, and then across the top were these doors
All the way
all
across.
the way across, and that's where he put
But
made the hinge for that.
Anyway, I did those. I bought a milling machine and made those. And then I got a lawyer. Bob wasn't around at the time. I got a lawyer in Minneapolis and applied for a patent on him. And then I went down. Well, first I went to McKinney, which was in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And I went with a pilot. He sold hardware on his route as he was a pilot. So he took a Bonanza and we went down to Scranton, Pennsylvania, and just the two of us in a plane. And we went through a storm in Wisconsin, actually. And I was strapped in, and I was still banging my head on the ceiling because it was so violent. And he said, well, if it doesn't straighten out by the time we get to Chicago, we'll take a commercial airline. But it did straighten out. We went to Scranton.
You can go to bed, Mary Jo, if you want.
And,
And this is the
And-
first I've heard about that,
Yeah.
banging
and,
his head.
and then they didn't buy it, and I went to Stanley, and they sent me a letter and said, let us know if you get any offers on it. And I didn't think that was ethical. And then I went to Hager, and they offered me a job as Director of Research and Development that same day. And
At double the salary he had made the year before,
yeah,
because he'd taken a lot of time off peddling these.
I had to
hinges.
take a lot of- But anyway, and bonus for moving and all that stuff, so we went down to Hager.
Didn't you have a couple other patents?
Yeah, I had about 4 things to
that,
show Hager.
that Hager's sold and had to pay him dividends on what
No.
they.
Well,
How long? You only got royalties though for what? 17 years.
but it was the helping hand that put the kids through college.
Yeah.
You know.
So,
It wasn't that much, but it was some.
so when you moved to St. Louis in '66, you moved what in March,
February.
February?
End of February, first part of March.
Okay.
And we rented a house
In
in
Webster,
Webster
Groves?
Groves first, because we didn't know the area at all. And then we started looking, and I mean, everybody said you should live up north, you should live down south, because that's where they lived and they liked it. But we found this house, and that's where we lived.
So, any great patents you had in the 12 years you worked for Hager Hinge?
For Hager, yeah, I had probably 15 or 16 in the years I worked for them. Probably more than that, but anyway, then they moved to Mississippi. They moved their operation to Mississippi. And then I went to work for Illinois Tool, and we lived in St. Charles.
Now, could you have gone to Mississippi, or they didn't take their engineers with them to Mississippi?
I don't know. I didn't crowd it. I didn't care to go to Mississippi, so I don't know.
But he was in
I-
St. Louis for 13 years.
There was a big family, and I got into some squabbles with a number of them, so they probably were ready to get rid of me.
So, when you went to St. Charles, you worked for Illinois Tool Work.
Yeah.
What'd you do for them?
I was a senior consulting engineer, and I worked for a small group. I think there was Tom Hurst's group. Anyway, we serviced about 4 different divisions: plastic fasteners, metal fasteners, a medical group, a gear group, and a drill group, or outfit that made drill bits. So it was a good experience, and
He said 5 years with them would, and he make a lot of contacts, and
you know,
the experience would be just worth it, and that's probably what he had.
Yeah.
But
And
he
then-
did a lot of traveling then too, and isn't that where you acquire certain companies too? They send you out to look at companies.
no,
Was that Connecticut?
there was no. It wasn't ITW. They'd send. We'd go out. I knew pretty well the president of ITW because we'd worked with him. And he had a guy whose duty was to go out and look for acquisitions. So I used to travel with him a lot, looking for companies to buy. So it was quite an experience.
Wasn't there some secret project you were working on with ITW? They,
Oh, I had one that to build a unit to go on paper, the newspaper containers that you settle, that you put money in. Well, they get broke into so often, and the money gets stolen, and they don't really care about the money. There's only $20 in them or something like that, but the repair is often $150 on the darn unit. So they wanted a paper credit card size thing that they could sell one a month, and you put that in and it punched out the number, and you got your paper. But then they had the money up front, and if you if you didn't use it on a paper, it was gone. You know, because the next month they'd rotate. There was a indexing method that would rotate for every card for every month. So if you didn't use your card up, it was useless. And then Ruford Murdoch bought the Chicago paper and killed the whole project.
Okay.
But I still got some of the cards around probably.
So why did you move to Connecticut?
I got a job I couldn't refuse.
They came after him.
Yeah. It was
ITW wasn't very happy about it, but
it was a headhunter that got me the job in Connecticut, and they said they'd been looking for an inventor for 5 years or something like that.
they want to go to bed.
Okay.
So,
No.
And he didn't. He went out to Connecticut. He said he wouldn't go without a contract at his age. And that was the first time they'd ever given anybody a contract.
mhm.
But he got a contract for
Wasn't it
5
a
years.
5-year
5
contract?
years, and then
could be renewable either by either one or refused by either
a
one.
pretty good,
So he got 6 years out there.
and a pretty good chunk of stock that was completed in the 5 years.
Yeah.
So it was a profitable move at the time.
And also the home prices went almost double while we were there. And they were starting to come down a little bit, but we made good on that house when we
Did-
sold it.
Did you expect them to get sold, that Anchor would sell out to ITW like they did?
I kind of did, yeah. I kind of did. Well, yeah, at least in the 3rd and 4th year there. In fact, I had talked to ITW about going back to them. They'd offered me a job to come back. But it was in Chicago, and
Up by Evanston, Illinois.
so I got to looking around, and Phillips offered me a job with the same pay and everything. And ITW had offered me that they would pick me up like I never left, and include they bought out Anchor, which would have been a great deal, because then I would have had a good number of years of seniority and a good pension set up. But they wouldn't put it in writing, and then they kind of backed out on paying for the real estate sale. So I took the job at Phillips, which was a lot more pleasant, because I just had a few miles to drive to work and no traffic, and
And had only to answer to the president
yeah.
of the company, the owner of the company.
So it was an enjoyable 11 years I spent with Phillips.
And the last 5 years was mostly in medical, which he enjoyed.
Yeah.
Now, when you left Phillips, though, you didn't retire right away. Didn't you when you moved out here permanently to Spooner? They let you keep work, or they paid your medical or something?
No, they kept me on at half pay for a year.
Okay.
And I was at their call, but they didn't call very often, so it was kind of like a half pay bonus.
Now, haven't you done some?
Then they give me all of the shop equipment for
Okay.
when I retired.
And his computer and his
Yeah, the whole,
printer and everything.
and then so it was an amiable settlement, but there wasn't they didn't have a retirement plan as such. It was stock, what you had to cash in once you left, but that was fine.
So how old were you when you actually retired?
I was 70 when I retired, so I had.
That was after you'd worked the year at half pay?
Yeah,
Okay.
because then working beyond 65 upped the Social Security considerably.
Okay.
And I enjoyed the work. It was, I could do whatever I wanted to do, and had good co-workers there.
And that's when he and Dr. Kuslich started their
Yeah.
pigtail fastener. And they won the
Hummocker Schlemmer
Hopmacher
Hammacher
Summer.
Schlemmer.
Invention of the Year.
What year was that when you won that?
You know, I don't know, and we also won the international invention thing at Cleveland.
And he got an award. It was what was the magazine called?
Oh, I got the plastic product of the year in Design News.
Design News. And they had a big ceremony at some big place in Chicago. And it was a wonderful presentation. And we sat at tables and they got the different awards. And one of the guys sitting at our table won a $25,000 prize. There were several of those. There were interesting people from all the types of invention type things.
The editor of the Design News sat at our table.
That's right.
I tried to talk him into starting a program to get industry to contribute equipment to schools. You know, their shops in schools are terrible. They're a disgrace.
Well, a lot of them don't even have them anymore.
Yeah, but you know, and there's the industry in every city that has used equipment that could make a tremendous shop, but I could never talk him into it.
Now, were you ever able to sell the pigtail fastener in stores or anything like that?
We sold some, but it didn't amount to much, and then Dr. Kuslich died, and you know, there went the financing for the company.
Well, then you had a patent on that snow removal.
Yeah,
And Menards bought, was it 12,000?
yeah, we sold some of them for a while, but then we went through a couple of years with no snow, and
Yeah.
and they wouldn't
Buy anymore?
It was much more, it was higher priced than a regular
Snow rake.
snow rake.
But
so
everybody that used them thought they were
loved
wonderful.
them, yeah.
But the guy that he worked with, that he invested with, didn't really push it too much. He had so many other interests that, so.
So what did you do while we were all growing up, Mom?
Took care of you kids, fed you, and washed your dirty clothes. And was your taxi till
Yeah.
you could learn to drive.
I remember you used to have ladies over for church and you'd have sherbet and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, we belonged to a circle, and we did a lot of entertaining in St. Louis.
Yeah.
We'd have open house at Christmas time and have like 100 people. That was fun. But I could never do that today.
Yeah.
It was well, you had 38th, yeah, or 30 some last weekend. But, that house we had in St. Louis was a nice house for entertaining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had a lot of space in it.
They had a lot of
Yeah.
space in it, and then finished off that basement, and
With the fuzzy carpet on the
It
walls.
was a very livable house.
Yeah. So which house did you like best out of all the houses you've lived in?
In many ways, this is the most livable one because, well, we don't go down the basement anymore. But
I liked the house. I liked all the houses we've been in.
yeah, they were
And I liked the one out in Connecticut very much. I like living out in the woods like that. And
yeah, that was a beautiful location.
What about that one in St. Charles with the gold flocked wallpaper?
no,
It was a comfortable house, and it was a good house. It was economical and everything. But
but
the one level is the most comfortable as you get older.
Yeah. So, when did you retire out here? What year was that?
I retired in 2000.
Okay, so you've lived in Spooner now full time for 13 years?
Yeah.
Well, maybe,
When
yeah.
we moved up here,
That's right, you were still working, but part-time, but
yeah.
we moved up here on our anniversary in 2000.
So if you're going to give us advice, what advice would you give us?
Well, my advice would try to get something you like because you'll do a better job of it. And, well, save some money. You know, you kids got after me for being cheap, but we ended up helping out most of you kids at some time, and we would not have been able to do that if we'd have spent it all.
No.
Because I don't have a good pension from anybody. I didn't work long enough for one company. But we made good money and we put some away.
Well, sometimes you got stock in lieu of
Yeah.
bonus or something. And he's gotten some bonuses. And
If you're going to go back and change anything, you change anything
Yeah, I would have got contracts
for
for inventions because they had agreed to give me royalties on inventions in Connecticut, and I had the shock mounts on the Explorer, and I had the door strikes, and those would have been.
they had verbally talked about it, but then they were also in the process of selling.
And I had what was called the anti-cross thread screw that Ford went to probably 75% of those. And if I'd have gotten royalties of any amount on that, it would have amounted to lots of money.
And you never pursued it when they did not, when they didn't stick to their word, or
No, I never pursued it.
And wasn't there a rumor that out in Connecticut, if they would get a bonus if they could get that through clear without giving anything to us?
I was told by a lawyer, and I'm sure he would have handled it, that I should go after it, but I didn't. To get involved in something that long.
because they would have all the time in the world to go to.
They had more money too.
Yeah. So what advice do you have, Mom?
I think my kids think they can give me advice rather than me give them advice, even today.
What would you go do differently if you could change something?
I might have tried to get an education, go to school rather than go to work. And in those days, you could always work your way through school, get a job and go to school, but I didn't. I never got any encouragement at home. I mean, it's just almost understood that you graduate from high school and get yourself a job.
Well, did any of your sisters get further education?
Judy did.
Okay.
Oh,
But no, but that she was the only one?
Yep.
So, and none of your sisters went to, well, Darlene went to college.
Grandma was a teacher.
Grandma Peterson.
Grandma Peterson. Raymond was a teacher. Joyce was a teacher.
But Joyce and Rama had the 2-year normal.
So you just went to 2-year college to become a teacher.
Because that's all they needed for a country school teacher.
Yeah.
But did they stop teaching once they had families?
Did they?
Stop teaching once they had families?
Pretty much, yeah.
But like his dad went to school, he went to St. Olaf some. He went to the Minnesota School of Business at the University of Minnesota. He was quite the businessman farmer.
He was.
By the time I knew him, Francis was 20 or so. He was more or less the boys did the work, and he just oversaw it all and took care of it financially, etc.
He was better educated than most farmers in those days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't, and Grandma Peterson was a teacher too
Yes,
before
she
she
was.
got married. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she had more of an education than,
Yeah.
than some.
I think at her time, I
That-
think they only had to go to school,
that
go
was-
like for 9 months to become a
If
teacher.
a woman was going to work in those days, that was about the only occupation she could pursue. You know, there
Or a
were very
nurse,
few
maybe.
secretaries and stuff.
Or nurse, yeah. But even secretaries, a lot of them, if they wanted a good job, they had to have some schooling.
So anything else you think we need to know for your legacy?
What's that?
Is there anything else you think we need to know for your legacy?